Tokia, yanaleo, miyan kekan-san, miwele pana e sona pitoki pona. Hey everybody, I'm Greg Dan3, and today I'm going to teach you about Toki Pona. Today, we're going to be talking about multiple li, multiple e, en, and anu. A collection of mini lessons to cover some of the bases I missed during the original lesson series. And by the way, there's only 2 big lessons left, so get excited. To start this lesson off, we're going to look back at the 2 particles we know and the 2 new particles we don't. And then we're going to look at a bunch of examples and see how they all work together. To start with, we know li, L-I, drawn with this arrow shape, and as a review, it lets you know what action is taking place in a sentence in Toki Pona. Next, we have e, drawn with 2 arrows, and its purpose is to talk about an object in a sentence. What is being acted upon in a sentence? Next, we have one new particle, en. That's spelled E-N. En is drawn with this plus shape. Its purpose is to introduce a new subject to a sentence after the first. And finally, we have anu, A-N-U. Anu is drawn with this Y shape with a bit of a wider top, and anu connects multiple phrases in the same part of speech, but with or instead of and. Again, we'll get to how this works very soon. Now to start off, we're going to look at multiple li in a sentence. To say that a subject does more than one thing, you say li a second time after the end of the predicate, marking another predicate. Saying li multiple times is like saying and in English, but just for the predicate, not for the other parts of speech. So let's have an example. Kulupu li suli li pona. The subject kulupu is doing 2 things, being suli and being pona. That is, being large and being good. Using more than one li has to do with one subject performing 2 actions. So this is actually very similar to using multiple sentences to describe the same one subject. We could instead say, kulupu li suli kulupu li pona. There's basically no difference between having one sentence like this, where I describe both predicates of the subject in the same sentence, versus having 2 sentences here, where they both individually describe the subject. These basically have the same meaning. Let's look at another example. We could say, Yan li tawa li lape. Now that is, a person moves, or tawa, and a person sleeps, or lape. And again, we can restate this as 2 sentences. So we could say, Yan li tawa, yan li lape. These 2 sentences are basically the same as this one sentence. Now, quick aside about these sentences so far. There's actually no issue with having 2 apparently incompatible predicates. Tawa here doesn't have to happen at the same time as lape. That is, the person can move at a different time from they sleep. And one sentence can describe both actions without issue. In Toki Pona, words don't mark their number and they don't mark their tense. In other words, it's totally okay that these 2 things are happening, because we could say, oh yeah, the person walked and then went to bed. Both are past tense in that case. Or we could say, the person is walking and will go to bed. These are all valid interpretations of this one sentence, Yan li tawa li lape. Now, of course, you can have as many predicates as you want, but try to keep your sentences shorter. Shorter sentences are generally easier to understand. One quick little note. We know that mi and sina behave a little specially in that they don't take li. So, in this case, you can't normally use li with them. But there are a couple of different ways that the community has gotten around that. You could say mi tawa and then separately mi lape. So, as we noted before, these multiple sentences can describe a single subject performing more than one action in the same way a single sentence with multiple predicates could. In other words, break this up into multiple sentences and you'll be just as well off as having 2 predicates. But this actually isn't the only thing you can do. Some speakers will do something more like this, sina tawa li lape. This is called the extended li, and it's a common way to introduce predicates after the first for subjects that involve mi or sina. Just use li anyway. Now, I personally prefer the former of these 2. I think this is more clear, and there's certain benefits to having a more divided up grammar that's clearer to your listener. But plenty of speakers use this other method, and for that matter, these two methods are not the only way to introduce more than one predicate for me and Sina.
The others are much less common, though.
So now that we've got that out of the way, let's move on to multiple e. Like li, e can be used more than once to apply a predicate to more than one object at a time. That is, act on more than one object with a single action. The predicate applies to every object that follows it, that immediately follows it generally. Let's have a look at what that does. We could say, kasi, li, pilin, e, suno, e, telo. So here we can see our multiple e here in the sentence. And we have two objects, suno and telo. So the interpretation of this sentence is something like, the plant is feeling the sun or the light and the water. Now you'll notice I said and in that previous sentence. The word li lets you say and for multiple predicates, and the word e lets you say and for multiple objects. Let's look at another example. Mi, moku, e, sui, e, lete. Mi moku e sui e lete. Now again, we have multiple objects, and we have our predicate that applies to both. So moku, as in to eat, says we're eating sweets, so maybe sugar, and lete, ice. Now, am I the only person in the world who chews ice? I hope not. So altogether, the interpretation of this sentence is something like, I eat sugar and ice. Now, this is a bit of a loose way to think about it and doesn't involve any modifiers, but this could be one way you might refer to eating ice cream. Or it could be referring to two separate things, one sweet and one cold. So you could be just eating sugar and ice. Now we're going to look at what happens when we have both multiple li and multiple e at the same time. So we saw that with multiple li, you can have multiple actions in a sentence, and with multiple e, you can have multiple objects affected by the actions in a sentence. Now, when you have them both together, how do you work out what's going on? Well, every single e goes back to the li immediately before. Let's have a look at what that means. Kasi, li, sui, li, pana, e, ko. Kasi, li, sui, li, pana, e, ko. So, the way multiple li and multiple e interact, it kind of works like this. As I described, the e looks back at the previous li. So in this case, we give some dust. The plant, rather, gives some dust. So let's go ahead and underline this group. And then over here at the start, kasi li sui, right here. This first li doesn't have an object because there isn't one directly following it. This second li does have an object. There's an object directly following it. And this would continue to apply if we had another object at the end here. So we could say, e telo, kasi li sui, li pana, e ko, e telo. And then this new object also is applied to by this li. So we're giving dust and some sort of liquid. So altogether, we might interpret this bigger sentence as the plant is sweet and it gives pollen and syrup. Most importantly, objects, as I said, go back to the li right before. If an object doesn't follow some predicate, there is no object for that predicate, generally. But what if we were to swap these around? Well, let's look at what happens. We could say, kasi, li, pana, e, ko, li, sui. And so now, the way the sentence works is swapped around, but the meaning is actually the same. Kasi, li, pana, e, ko, and then li, sui. Our object here is still grouped together with this predicate, and so we're still giving dust, and this predicate over here is still separate. Alright, now that we have that down, let's go on to a more complex sentence. We could say, Yan, li, yaki, e, lipu, li, telo, e, lipu. Yan, li, yaki, e, lipu, li, telo, e, lipu. Here are our predicate and object groups. This predicate, yaki, applies to this object, lipu. Then we have a new predicate, telo, and that applies to this other object, which is also lipu. And in this context, the two don't really interact. This is all we have and all we need. So interpretation-wise, it's kind of like having two separate sentences, which would be Yan li yaki e lipu, and then separately, Yan li telo e lipu. Same idea as when we began the lesson with multiple li, where we can break it up into multiple separate sentences. Now, what does this sentence mean? This first part, Yan li yaki e lipu, is something like, the person made the book gross, or made the document gross. Maybe you could say they grossed the book. And then over here, li telo e lipu, that is, they cleaned, they watered the book. So in this context, it is possible for these two different objects to be the same thing. That's also the same idea as if we were to break it up into multiple sentences. The same group of word in one the same word or group of words in the same context probably refer to the same thing. This is why it makes sense to say, if we had our separate sentence, Yan li yaki e lipu and then Yan li telo e lipu, they're probably both describing the same yan and the same lipu in just one context. Alright, now I'd like to talk about one little tricky bit in the grammar. So, what I've described so far is a pretty strict version of Tokipona's grammar, but it's not actually so strict all the time. There is a bit of room for experimentation and to just let go and speak a little bit more freely. Let's take a look at what happens when we have this sentence, but relaxed a bit. We could say, Yan, li, yaki, li, telo, e, lipu. So normally, the first predicate, yaki, would not connect to the object, lipu, all the way over here. And we can see why, right? There's kind of a dividing line between these two predicates, or normally there would be. But in this case, you'll have speakers that apply two or more predicates to the same object, like in this sentence. That is, Yan li yaki li telo e lipu could mean a person makes gross and then cleans the book. So these two predicates can, in some interpretations, apply to the book, the lipu. Now, be cautious, of course, because while this sentence structure, this relaxed grammar, can mean what I described, it can also catch you off guard. This sentence could mean a person made the book gross and then cleaned the book, but it could also mean a person is gross and then separately they clean the book. If you feel like maybe your grammar isn't clear enough, maybe the statement you made isn't quite right, restate yourself with a bit more grammar to glue the ideas you want to get across together. In other words, try expanding this more relaxed sentence into this more specific sentence that is clear about what you mean. Alright, now we're going to get on to the first truly new content of this set of mini lessons, with the word en. So we saw before that li can be used more than once to refer to multiple actions, kind of like having and then we saw that e can do the same for multiple objects. What if we wanted to do that for the subject? Well, for the subject, we have the word en, and that works something like this. Sina, en, mi, li, musi. That would be, you and I are having fun. En lets us have multiple subjects performing the same action. All of the rest of our grammar works basically the same way. We can still have multiple li and multiple e. The only difference is that we can have more than one subject doing those actions at the same time. Here's another example. We could say, pali, en, lape, li, pona, e, yan. So our entire subject up here is pali, en, lape. So that is something like working or creating, and then sleeping, li, pona, e, yan. That is improves, helps, or heals people. So altogether, creating and resting will heal people. Let's look at one more example. Mi, en, sina, en, kulupu, li, tawa, li, moku, kasi, telo. Our subject phrase up here is now 3 subjects long. Mi, en, sina, en, kulupu. That is, you and me and the group. And then the action of the sentence, li tawa, may be travel, li moku, kasi, telo. That is, to eat, plants, and water. So, obviously, sentences like this can get pretty complex pretty fast. But let me tell you a little tip. Each of these pieces of grammar, you can interpret them individually and then put them back together. So for example, if you didn't really know what it meant to say, li moku, kasi, telo, well, you don't have to worry about all those things. You can look at telo, okay, we're doing something to liquid. Kasi, we're doing something to plants, and then go back. Li moku. Oh, wait, that's to eat. Okay, so we're eating liquid, probably water, and plants. And then you can go back to here, to the subject, and see what is doing those things. That is, me, sina, and kulupu. Me, you, and the group. Now, one quick little footnote. You can use en any number of times, just like you can use li and any number of times. But again, brevity and clarity are key. So if you're using en a bunch of times, you may want to consider breaking up your idea into more than one sentence. All right, one last mini lesson, and this one's on the word anu. So, foreword about anu is that while it is relatively clear what it means and how speakers of Tokipona use the word, it's also not very well documented by the language's official sources, that being Sonia Lang's Tokipona, the Language of Good. Anu isn't used very much in that book, so over time, different Tokipona speakers have come to interpret it different ways. I'm going to show you the most common handful of ways you're going to see, and then kind of give you a reference point for other ways you might see it. So for starters, you can use anu in basically every part of speech. So let's look at that first in the subject. Mi, anu, sina, li, ken, pali, ni. Mi, anu, sina, li, ken, pali, ni. So this subject up here, mi, anu, sina, is something like me or you. Ken, pali are able to create ni. This, whatever's being referred to or pointed out. So the way this works is that we're basically saying there are 2 possibilities. One or the other of these is something that could be true or could be done. That is, I could create this, mi ken palie ni, or sina ken palie ni. So this is one common use of anu. Let's move on to seeing it in the predicate. Sina, ken, yo, anu, pakala, ilo. Sina, ken, yo, anu, pakala, ilo. So interpretation-wise, if we have anu in the predicate, it's a little bit like saying either of these 2 actions could take place. Sina ken yo, or sina ken pakala, ilo. Again, this is something like a choice, 2 possibilities we're describing that could occur. So interpretation-wise, this sentence is something like, you are allowed to have, as in keep, or destroy the tools. Now, if that makes sense, let's move on to the object. We can say, soeli, li, ken, moku, kili, anu, kala. Soeli, li, ken, moku, kili, anu, kala. That is, the animal can eat fruit or vegetables or fish. Now, this one's a bit tricky because there's multiple interpretations here, and this is actually one of the reasons you won't see anu used all too much. One interpretation of this sentence might be the animal is able to eat fruit or fish, as in describing the things their diet allows. Or it could be saying the animal has permission to eat only one or the other of fruit or fish. And the first of those is actually nearly the same as saying right here. Thus the trickiness of anu. But, for the most part, anu makes sense here, and it tells you, yeah, one way or the other, this animal is able to eat fruit or fish. Anu's behavior in the object, otherwise, is exactly what you'd expect. One last case. We can have anu in a prepositional phrase. Yan, alasa, li, lape, lon, tomo, anu, lon, poki, lape. Yan alasa, li lape, lon tomo, anu, lon poki lape. So here, anu is connecting together two prepositional phrases, lon tomo and lon poki lape. So interpretation-wise, the statement means something like, Yan alasa, the hunter, sleeps li lape, lon tomo, in a home, anu lon poki lape, or in a sleeping bag. Those are the two options. And you'd say anu is used here because these two options might be exclusive, as in to say, one or the other is true, but not both at the same time. And that's why you wouldn't just say lon a second time without anu. Because maybe that's just not true. Maybe it really is true that your hunter only sleeps in either a home or a sleeping bag and not both. Now, quick little note about the grammar here. This is one way to describe anu in a prepositional phrase where we repeat the preposition, but there's actually another. It's possible that some speakers will omit the second preposition, but it still has basically the same meaning. Yan alasa li lape lon tomo, anu poki lape. And so this lon applies to the tomo and to the poki lape. Again, the same interpretation, just different grammatical realizations of this idea. Final notes for how anu works. So as with li and you can use anu any number of times, but for clarity, you should stick to just one or maybe two in a sentence, if that. Obviously, as your sentences get longer and more complex, it's a little harder to follow along with the idea you're trying to express, so again, the shorter, the better. And lastly, I want to give at least a little shout out, if not a full explanation, to a couple other ways you'll see anu used. So the ways I described here today are all ways in which you introduce parts of speech to anu, but you can also have, for example, connected modifiers with anu, especially with the word pi.
You could also see anu used as a content word at the start of a sentence like taso and many other very rare uses. It's most clear to stick to the common stuff. But
part of the fun of Toki Pona is exploring all these different ways that this language can be spoken, and these lessons primarily focus on the most common ways you're going to see Toki Pona spoken. So it'll give you a great starting point, but the only way to really make things work is to get out there and practice. Thank you so much for listening to my lessons. If you like these Toki Pona lessons, be sure to like and subscribe, leave comments, tell me what you think, give me suggestions, point out mistakes I made, please, and check out my website at mun.la. You can find all my Toki Pona lessons, you can find links to other Toki Pona creators' content, you can find links to different Toki Pona communities, you can find, I don't know, your soulmate. You can find something crazy on my website. You probably won't find your soulmate, but hey, my site's there, you can check it out. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good one.